Jersey to run cross country and track and field, steeplechase, 5K, 10K,
Nice.
conference champion, school record holder in the 10K. And then as I've gotten older, I tend to like to go further because I can go slower. So I'm a three-time Leadville 100 finisher. I also have about 35 or 36 ultra marathons under my belt.
Okay.
Multiple time Boston Marathon qualifier, two-time finisher. I was supposed to go in 2020, but we all know what happened there.
Oh yeah.
And then I also run a online coaching business for marathoners and ultra marathoners, and coached high school cross country, track and field, um, wrestling. Jimmy's coached wrestling as well too. So that's kind of our wheelhouse. And you name a topic, we've probably had a guest on to cover those topics. But over the last probably 2 years or so, we really honed in on college athletics and even more specifically Division III, Division II, NAIA, and JUCO. We feel that the Power Fives and the mid majors, they get a lot of shine, and that's where a lot of the media coverage tends to go. And so we like to have conversations with people like yourself and talk about programs at Wartburg, and celebrate those things and let athletes know that are coming out of high school. If you're committed to your sport and you're willing to work hard, and maybe you didn't hit your true potential in high school, there's a place out there that can help you develop and reach your goals at the next level. So that's what we're doing over here with Airey Bros Radio.
Cool. Do you know Wartburg Wrestling,
We're
Jimmy?
going to get into that.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, y'all. We are back tonight and we are on the cross country course again. We are heading into Nationals weekend. So we are excited for our guest tonight. We know he's taking time out of his busy week getting ready for travel and all that stuff, but he's making some time for us. So we are stoked as we head into the Division III cross country nationals this weekend. But before we get into any of that, make sure you hit the like, rate, review, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you have any questions about ultra marathons, marathon training, any of that stuff, head on over to Black Sheep Endurance, and I'll get you set up with all those answers. Without further ado, we are here with Ryan Chapman. He is the head coach at Wartburg College. His teams are getting ready to run at the national championships on Saturday. He is leading the Knights to the 13th NCAA Championship appearance, including a historic second place men's finish and a third place women's finish in 2022. Ryan is also a three-time USTFCCCA Regional Coach of the Year. Ryan has guided teams to multiple regional and conference titles, with the women's team winning 4 straight Central Regional Championships. Under his leadership, Wartburg athletes have earned 19 All-American honors in cross country and 6 All-American finishes in track, including a national championship in the women's 3,000-meter steeplechase. Before joining the program at Wartburg, Ryan led Aurora University to 22 conference titles and coached 22 All-Americans while earning multiple Coach of the Year awards. Coach Chapman, it is an honor and a pleasure to have you join us this evening. Welcome to
Yeah.
Airey Bros Radio.
Yeah. Thanks, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Happy to be here.
Well, we are excited to chat with you. You know, you got a big, busy week ahead of you, getting ready, putting all the final touches on it. But we're excited to get into the program, hear about your journey into coaching, but then also how things are looking as we head into the final weekend of the cross country season.
Yeah, I appreciate it. We're not quite as busy as usual. We get to drive a bus to this one. You know,
Okay.
we're heading 6 hours to Indiana.
Okay.
So last year, if any listeners wanted to know, it's hard to get from Iowa to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We found that out last year. There's really no easy way. But this year, we got about a 6 hour drive across the Bible Belt. Down to we're gonna go through Paris, Illinois. See a little mini Eiffel Tower, and we'll be in Terre Haute.
Have you
So
been to Terre Haute? Have you guys run there?
we were there in late September of this year.
Okay.
So legendary coach, John McNichol's really the brain of the course down there. He's since passed on, but they host a meet in his honor every year. So we brought the athletes down in September.
Awesome. Did you all happen to stop at the donut shop and get any square donuts while you were in town?
We didn't, we
Okay.
didn't, but we will. But we
Okay.
will. So
Jimmy and I are very familiar with Terre Haute. We've driven cross country multiple times, and whether we're going east or we're coming west, it just seems to be a stopping point at the end of the evening to rest our heads. So we've been there many times. We've stopped and gotten some square donuts, and we even saw someone walking a burro down Main Street the last time we were there.
I've been there because of track nationals too. I've been there quite a few times, and I did not know about the square donut. So this is, I'm writing it into our itinerary.
Okay. Yeah, the name of it place escapes me, but it's definitely a place, and that's what they're known for. They have square donuts.
Okay.
So, but so yeah, Coach, a little through line for you as I was getting into before Jimmy stopped me. Save it for the live broadcast. You are our third representative from Wartburg joining us on Airey Bros Radio. Previously, we had Coach Nick Mitchell, who was at Grand View in Iowa. He's a wrestling coach. He was an athlete at Wartburg, and he wrestled for is it what's Coach
Jim Miller.
Miller? Jim
Yeah, Jim
Miller.
Hill.
Jim Miller. Jim Miller. And Jim Miller was a guest of ours as well too, talking about the National Wrestling Hall of Fame in Waterloo. So we've had some nights on
Well,
previously.
we got to get Keller on here at some point. That's the head coach right now, our
Well,
wrestling coach. That's, you
maybe
know,
you can be the connect on that because we have sent some emails his way. So maybe you should tell him to check his spam for the Airey Bros because we definitely
okay,
want to
okay.
speak to him. We
So, I'm an Illinois guy, and Illinois is a wrestling state. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not a terrible state, but the moment I get here, Coach Keller meets me, and I can't really do it sitting in this chair, but he kind of gets in like a grappling position to shake my hand, and then that was like the first day I met him. They don't mess around here in Iowa when it comes to wrestling.
No, they
So
don't. They don't. They take it very seriously, and one of the hot topics of debates is what state, what states are the top five, top 10 in wrestling in high school, and everyone kind of concedes that Pennsylvania is by far and away the number one, but New Jersey, Illinois, Iowa, Oklahoma, Ohio, New York, California, those are the ones that kind of always
mhm,
come up over and over, and it
sure.
can get very heated in those debates for sure.
What do you think, Jimmy?
I agree with Rich where PA is number one. And I mean, I'm a Jersey guy, and I've gotten in plenty of arguments with guys from other states about what the toughest is. And where we're from in New Jersey, it used to be Region 6, it's now the Short Conference. That's kind of like the hotbed, or was when I was coming up and when Rich was coming up, of New Jersey wrestling. And we carry that on our chest, on our back. We let everyone know we are from Region 6. We have pride in where we're from. Couple UFC fighters from there, couple Olympians from there, just kind of the gamut. If you came up in Region 6, we know you're a tough guy. So yeah, we wear that with pride.
Okay. Well, I went to college at Augustana College in Illinois, and we shared a locker room with the wrestling team, and high school, I mean, we had wrestling, but it was over there, but in college, man, we had so much respect, because when you're running endurance running, it's just different, like you really take pride in the work, this sort of go to the well, fetch some water kind of mindset about putting work in. It wasn't so much of just not there's anything weak about just memorizing plays and watching tape but we were just active, 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 active. I mean, we're talking about the race while we train, right? We're not, just very active training all the time. And we just had so much respect for those wrestlers because, you know, there's a lot of great sports out there, but very few sports are lifestyle sports, and if you're an endurance athlete, if you're a wrestler, I just feel like you got to be a wrestler at dinner time and you got to wake up a wrestler. And if you're a distance runner, you know, you got to be a distance runner when you're on a date with your girlfriend, when you're, at the cafeteria, they're very much lifestyle sports. So, it fits being at Wartburg, with cross country track and wrestling being such big sports. So we really gel. The wrestling coach was the first guy to shout out, success after we, got the regional title this week. So
That's awesome.
Well, Coach, I'm not gonna lie. Wartburg Wrestling is how the cross country team came on my program or came on my radar
Yeah.
because I looked at Iowa Central Community College when I was in high school, and we went out there for the open, and we saw these killers in black and orange singlets, and realized the history of it. And then because of the podcast, we've been paying attention to Wartburg and everything they got going on. And I want to kind of get into that as far as, are you guys just good at all sports? Like, do you have a killer AD there that kind of just like, hey, we're here to win?
We do have a killer AD. John Cochran's his name. His son is a linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs. Um, he was a longtime AD at Cornell College, not up east, but here in Iowa. But there's something cool about athletics here. Coaches don't leave, and I just feel like, and you guys have seen this talking to different programs, when you got a lot of autonomy year in and year out, you can build culture, and culture's really strong here. People talk about, like, before I took the Wartburg job, I was living in Chicagoland. I was Naperville, Aurora, Illinois, and a lot of people. And then I took this job and moved my family out to a town of 10,000 people, in Northeast Iowa. And a lot of my people say, "What are you doing?" Like, yeah, I love to eat. I love food, and I like Indian food, and and Thai food. I like, Malaysian food, and all of a sudden I'm in a town of 10,000 people, limited options, just a different type of living. But as a competitor, man, this is where I want to be. With and you could say this even at Monmouth, like, I don't mind if my kids, don't have a lot of distractions. I mean, it's just they're really locked in, and you could say the same thing for the wrestlers because we get wrestlers from all over the place. I mean, we got a freshman on the team from, we have internationals, that are here, and it works differently with scholarship money. Like, people are here because they want to be here from all across the country. Um, so you see a lot of sports. I mean, we have a new basketball coach, but before that, Coach Pace was here for like 30 years. Newsom in the track program, he's been here for 30 years. Um, I'm one of the young guys. I've been here 9 years. So I think that's a big part about the program. The expectations are really high, but the buy-in is quick. And the Iowa kids, the small town kids, man, they know what work's all about. We're not really introducing any new ideas, to them. I really think that young men and young women, they want to buy in. They really want to buy into something. They just might not know what or how to buy into. Like, um, point me in the right direction. Show me what I need to do. And I think sometimes, um, as coaches, we can be passive about that instead of being active, and really creating these lifestyle sports. And man, that's happening across the board. So yeah, sports are good here. Football's got playoffs. Soccer was just in playoffs. Um, our women's basketball team, I think they're ranked second right now in the country. There's a lot of cool things here. Facilities are real sharp. Facilities are nice, but facilities are only so much, right? I mean, you need character, and you need a lot of buy-in, and that's something that we really get on the high end, to the point where we got a big team. I don't know if you guys were able to look at the roster. I mean, we have over 90 kids on our cross, team right now. So
So, Coach, before we take too many forks in the road, I don't want to get too far away from the beginning of the podcast. Let everyone know, future recruits, fans, where they can find you, where they can find the program, social media, anything like that.
yeah. Instagram, Wartburg XC. You can find us. And then you can find us on X at Run Wartburg, on Facebook at Run Wartburg. We are go-nights.net. You can follow us, take a look at all that stuff. So, and we're pretty active on there too. We got, we got some entertaining stuff to look at. Our guys are having a lot of fun.
Coach, before we get too far into it, when did you know you wanted to be a coach?
So I went to graduate school to be an English professor. My background is in lit. I went to Washington University in St. Louis to study literature, but I picked the wrong time to graduate. I finished school in '07. And if you gentlemen remember '07, the economy crashed.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, good luck finding a job. So I had a gig. I was an adjunct teacher living in the South Side of Chicago. I had classes at the University of Chicago, at North Park, and at Lewis. And even with, all those gigs lined up, I'm making peanuts with no health insurance. Just sort of crashing. I had a place down around, back then it was Comiskey Park. Now, I don't know if anybody knows the name of where the White Sox play. I don't know if any fans came to the games this year. I'm a diehard fan, but there's not very many of us in Iowa. So I'm ready for the school year, and then early August, a job opened at Aurora University, at a small, school about 45 minutes west of Chicago. And I checked it out because I was always running. When I was at WashU, I was just sort of a volunteer assistant, and we were very successful when I was there. They're always very successful program. I mean, I know you guys have spoke with Jeff Stiles.
Shout out to Coach Styles.
Yeah. Stiles was my guy, worked under him for 3 years just as a volunteer. So I applied for this job, and at 25 years old, I got it. And it was a head track, head cross. I was way over my head. I auditioned. I had facial hair like you have now, or interviewed rather. And, a week later when they hired me and I shaved, they said if I would have came in clean shaven, they wouldn't have hired me. But what was cool about the job, they wanted to keep the assistant coach. They had an assistant coach there, and she'd been there, for like 3 years, and they wanted autonomy. And they asked me to interview the assistant coach, and I liked her, and I married her. And it just sort of came together. So my, at some point, wife, she was working sprints, hurdles, jumps. I was javelin coach, distance coach. For about 6 weeks, I was our pole vault coach, until I realized that was that was an occupational hazard for me. I was going to put a kid in the hospital. So we found, somebody to come in and volunteer. But I was there at Aurora for about a year, and I had an opportunity to leave and teach. And it was considerably more money, but there was something about, what was going on, where I felt like I was reaching the athletes more than I was reaching my students, because I was always teaching. And that was it. I felt like there was like the whole proverbial, like, two roads diverged in a wood, and I went the coaching route. And that was 8 years at Aurora, and this is 9 years now. My wife and I, she wanted to get out of coaching for all the right reasons. I have 3 children. My middle son, Elliot, he was 3 days old and he was at a track meet. I mean, 3 days old, working the long jump, triple jump hit. Might as well have been marking the jumps. I mean, and we wanted to have a third child, and my wife is a professor. She teaches at Wartburg, exercise science professor. So when the Wartburg job opened up, it was just, it made a lot of sense. It made a lot of sense. I was able to focus on distance, and not be a head track coach anymore, which was very rewarding. But it was just something I wasn't as passionate about. I love working with the kids, but yeah, I really wanted to work with the distance athletes. So it just kind of fell together to the point where I feel like all the things and all the attributes that I loved about teaching, they never went anywhere. Like, it's not that crazy for me to drop, a literary quotation in a huddle. I'd like to think that I teach our athletes a lot of big vocabulary words. So it's just a different way of looking at teaching. So but I do think that has played well into my coaching career, because I never got into coaching because I wanted to live vicariously through these kids. I never got into coaching because, it was sports all the time. I just didn't want sports to end. It was very much looking at sports through more of, maybe an academic lens, but much more, of like of a community-based one. What can I give back, in helping these kids? Because, man, when I started coaching at Aurora, a cross-country team, we had 6 men on the team, and it was a ragtag crew. I mean, we're talking like like East Bay uniforms, like secondhand shoes with duct tape. We didn't have a locker room. I mean, it was a crew, and I drove the bus naturally. The women, we had about 7 gals, and my I all love if any of those kids, check out this podcast. But my second year with that program, something I've never done since, never before, our men were dead last in the region. And to be dead last, in the Midwest region, NCAA Division III in 2007, you you're pretty bad. I mean, we started from the bottom. But my fourth year there, we had 75 kids on the cross country roster, and I just started feeling like man, I'm pretty good at this. Like as far as getting kids interested. I mean, you guys had good college experiences. I felt like, you know, something I was really good at in undergrad was getting people to show up at stuff. If we had like a conference get together, or if we were doing something cool with the team, I could get people to show up. Kind of like a promoter. And I felt like change the situation around. I was pretty good at getting people excited about sport, about cross country running. So we brought a lot of big numbers. So before you know it, I got I got assistant coaches, I got GAs, and it started making a lot more sense where I didn't look at those teaching jobs anymore, and just sort of locked into this vocation. So, like I'm sure a lot of people that come on your show, um, I just sort of fell into it, But my background is creative writing, literature. My dissertation was a novel. 2013, I had a book of poetry published. It's goofy stuff you don't really have for a lot of athletic coaches, but you know, just kind of happened.
So 90 people on the team right now, 75 after a couple of years. Say recruiting is a pretty solid, strong suit for you.
Yeah. I like to talk to people, and my first year as a full-time coach, I recruited between track and cross country. I brought in 4 kids. That was it. That was it. But I spent the whole year trying to recruit this young lady to marry me. And that was it. And I got that one taken care of. And then I felt like I was able to really take off. Um, we're definitely at a point where we're very particular. We're very specific. We do not recruit for numbers. I just I really want to make sure that this is not lemonade stand recruiting. We're not trying to just bring in bodies. Yes, when you are at a private college, a smaller school, you got to play ball. I mean, it's just part of the deal. You know, um, Athletics, and you guys know that athletics helps keep the doors open. I mean, Wartburg's about 1,500 students, and a lot of those are athletes. A lot of those are athletes, but we're not going to compromise the integrity of the program by just sort of opening the floodgates. So I like recruiting. I think it's fun. But what do you like? About communication. You guys obviously like communicating with people because you do your podcast. And you find cool nuances about people. Here, let me show you something. I got something cool here. So here on my desk, I got these frogs. You see these frogs? You picking them up?
Hold them up a little bit. They're kind of
All right,
under the
see
camera.
these
There you
frogs?
go. Yeah.
Okay, so these frogs, um, they belong to my grandparents. So my grandparents, Southern Illinois, farmers, you know, simple people, like people that you kind of know who they are without knowing who they are. Not a lot of education, but at some point in their lives, my grandma and grandpa, they're passed now. They had one of the largest like ceramic frog collections in the Midwest, and they would go to trade shows and they'd show off these frogs. So when they passed, the family, we were able to kind of go in and take some frogs. And I got 4 of them here in my office, frogs that I like. And where am I going with this? I like that these people who you thought you knew, just Midwestern farmers, you know, they had these idiosyncrasies. They had something different. They had something about them. They had frogs. My grandpa had a 6-foot frog with an umbrella, on the front porch. Bizarre, strange. And I feel like when you start recruiting, everybody's got some nuance. Everybody's got some sort of trait, some idiosyncrasy that they bring to the team. It's something really cool and unusual, and we just want to figure that stuff out. So when it comes to, like what kind of athletes are we looking for? And we're looking for athletes that are really passionate about running, but more than that, what do they like to do? Like what's cool about them? Like you guys got some tattoos I see. Like each one of those tattoos got a story. Like when people come into the office and they got I want to know those stories. So I think being curious is, in my opinion, one of the most important things about recruiting. Because if you look at recruiting as just, selling a product, it can get so mundane. You got a script, but if you genuinely look at a family, or you look at some guy or gal, and you think, man, like, tell me about yourself, like really, like what makes you tick. It makes the whole process more fun, because then when they come run for you, you're still getting to know them and you still learn, because I got to tell you, when you are a full-time coach, there's not a lot of time for friendship. You're hanging out with 18 through 23-year-olds, so you might as well get to know them on more than just the surface level. So I think that curiosity has really helped me as a recruiter, because it makes every phone call different, every phone call unique. Um, I've never really subscribed to those like recruitment services. You get these emails all the time, pay me money and read off this script. This is how to write an email. Like, I know how to write an email. I'm a, English major, right? It's more of just making people feel comfortable, and just getting to know them. So that's kind of my shtick with recruiting. And yeah, we got a big team. This year we have, what do we got? 65 men on the team, and about 30 women. So we lose a lot though. We'll graduate about 21, this year. We still are dealing, you guys know, I mean, this is the last year of COVID eligibility, so we have some fifth years, that have stuck around, but yeah, we got a lot of guys, no doubt, Rich. So
You got me fired up.
yeah.
Heck yeah.
Coach, I want to dive into this year's team, but you mentioned curiosity. Do you find that comes from your love of literature and having that background in English and literature and writing, that growing up reading books kind of made you curious about people?
I think so. When I was, I don't know, 7 or 8, like a lot of us that are late 30s, 40s, and older. My parents, for Christmas one year, they bought a set of encyclopedias, and that seems so strange, right? I mean, I got this phone right here. You know, I'm one of the like 3 people each year. I donate money to Wikipedia. You know how they always ask? I
Mm-hmm.
actually give them. I don't give them a lot. Don't get me wrong, but I give them like $5 a year. It's like the most important site on. If I want to know something, I'm going on. That's what it was like growing up. We had these encyclopedias. So you open up the A's, right? I think you start with like aardvark and you go from there. So yeah, I think so. Um, I was always curious about just the most mundane stuff. Like whenever we drove through, the country, and all of our family trips growing up, I had one brother, were fishing trips, and we would tend to go north. We tend to go up into Canada. And I would always want to know where that school or where that town went to school. I don't know why. Like zoning was something that really mattered to me. Where do these people go to high school? And I'd find out, and then other things too. Growing up with baseball cards, we get those Beckett price guides, and I'd like to memorize the Beckett price guides. So when you're doing like schoolyard transactions with baseball cards, you don't have to check the book. You know what cards cost. Just silly stuff. So I feel like I've always had, a just a different outlook. Um, Very pedantic, very detail oriented. And I think even if you want to talk like biomechanics, like you need to be detail oriented to be effective, as a coach. Like if like you could ask me what are 5 workouts that you do, and somebody could be on the other end writing them down and do them, but it might not work for you. It might not be nuanced enough because there's all these different things that these particular athletes that are doing, you know, everybody's got something different. So yeah, I do think that curiosity has certainly, helped me as a coach, and it certainly keeps things fresh.
Coach, you also mentioned you've got 60 men on the team this year and 30 women. And doing research for this podcast, I found an interview of you from the beginning of the season, and it was really interesting to kind of see what you thought the teams were going to look like at the beginning of the season. And now we know going into regionals, they're both going to nationals. The men are one of the heavy favorites, and the women kind of, you guys had a drop off this year. A lot of people graduated, but you guys still qualified for nationals. And you mentioned before the tale of two different seasons.
Mhm.
How's that going for you? Are you where you thought you would be at the beginning of the year when you were giving that interview? Is it going better than you thought it would be? How are they looking going into the national meet?
Yeah, it's going better than I thought on the women's side. When you are when you are relying on freshmen, you're really you're asking a lot out of them. You're asking a lot out of yourself. You got to be patient. You have to be. You got to be patient with those those athletes, and some of the stuff they got to find on their own terms. But um, real quick buy-in, real quick. They wanted to be good, and they've really got. I mean, some of these gals that are helping us get to nationals, if you look at their high school resumes, I mean, I'm not saying they're weak runners, but they've certainly they're surpassing their high school 5K PRs quite handily within the 6K already, only a couple weeks, months in rather. So yeah, I mean, we're really impressed, with where our women at. I mean, running 4 freshmen at the national meet, that's a surprise, so pleasantly, a pleasant surprise. It was still awfully close. It was awfully close, but we did what we needed to do. We're not quite at the point to beat Wash U and Chicago, but I don't know, another year. The men we knew who we were, so it was really just a matter of who was going to be the guy. You know, we had our guy Schermerhorn. He was second in the nation last year in the 10K, and he didn't run conference for us. He didn't run regionals for us, um, and he very well might run nationals for us. So we'll see about that. If it had he been healthy throughout the season, I think I'd be really excited. Not that I'm not, but I think I'd be really elated, with where our guys are at. But I mean, Rich, it's hard to get through a cross country season in one piece. Like if 100% of our team is healthy by the end of the year, we're probably not very good. Like um, so there's a couple workouts I wish I could have back. I might have done something different that day, but all in all, yeah, we're better than we're better than I thought we were on the women's side, and you know, we're about as good as I thought we were on the men's side, except sort of the elephant in the room. We didn't expect our sophomore Hammerhand to be a potential, national title guy, at the beginning of the year. I mean, this guy skipped the 24s. We went from low 25s last year all the way down into the 23s, so that's awfully exciting. He's only a sophomore, still learning. So we talk about it a lot, and you hear this. It's kind of like a sports, like a cliched metaphor, but you talk about shark's teeth, right? I mean, the shark's so dangerous, right? You lose one tooth, another one comes right back in. And we really think like that on the men's side. If a guy goes down, somebody else comes in and takes his place. That's what the depth's for, and we've certainly seen that this year as our guy Schermerhorn has dealt with injuries. We just got a couple other guys, boom, 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 right in there, without missing a beat. Another one of our top guys from last year, Jack Kinzer, that was a guy at nationals for us. He's out. He's been out, the whole season. Looking to come back next year for a 5th year. I mean, that's a guy we expected to be a top 25 in the nation guy, and we miss him, right? We miss his leadership and we miss his charisma and all the. But as far as being, replaced by other good guys, yeah, I mean, shark's teeth. Guys just came right in there. So, yeah.
Coach, you mentioned that sophomore skipping the 24s and going right to the
Yeah.
23s. And I know Rich had some heavy duty postseason summer training where he came in and he was ready for nationals August 1st of cross country camp. Is that how he came in this year? or did you know you had something at cross country camp this year when he came in, or was it a race that he kind of broke out?
Second meet of the year, we hosted a 6K, and he was running against our guy Schermerhorn and then a kid from Cornell, who's like a 14 flat kid, and he takes off, and he just out of nowhere, and he takes the big lead and gets caught. So he took a risk. We were pretty impressed. But then the next meet, we go down to Terre Haute on the national course, and he's in the lead. I just hear over the loudspeaker, you know, in the lead at the 2K mark is, Hammerand of Wartburg. And we just kind of rolled with it. That there, it was one of those things where he made a decision. I remember years ago, and it was I forget it now who it was about, but there was an interview with Holloway down in Florida, with Mike Holloway, and coach down there said, when so and so, when he looks in the mirror and sees that he's the greatest, sprinter in the world, he'll become the greatest sprinter in the world. And I think that's kind of what it's been like for Hammerhand. He just decided, I'm going to be great, and his fitness was there. His biomechanics were way better because as a freshman, he was a goofy runner. I mean, we really had to work a lot. He's a tall, gangly guy, and we had to work on settling down a little bit. He was always pressing, but he just believes. He looks in the mirror and he sees a 10. And he don't care if anybody sees a 5. I mean, he's a 10. And he brings that to the races. So, no, I didn't see it coming all summer. When he's doing his training and contacting me. A lot of our kids are. I mean, he's a farm kid. He's working a hard summer job. He's doing he's working farm job, and he's like laying concrete, all summer, running at like 4:30 in the morning, 5 in the morning. But all the while he's germinating these ideas, and something I say to our guys, the most dangerous thing for, and you can say it for any sport, but for me, the most dangerous thing for distance runners is an idea. Guys and gals start getting an idea in their head that they can do something really scary, and then they start stacking, onto that idea. They stack days, they stack nutrition, they stack sleep, they stack one good workout after another good workout. And before you know it, pretty special stuff. So Hammerand's running, at the Augie Interregional meet this year, and he takes off again. But this time he doesn't take off on a bunch of no names. He takes off on, nth time national champion Christian Patska, of Whitewater. And we go through the 5K, and he's got 8 seconds on him. And this guy, he's your, steeplechase, record holder, just missed qualifying for the trials last year. I mean, this guy's a real deal. And somebody says to me in the crowd, like, well, coach, you think he's going to hold on? And I responded, no, I don't. I think he's going to get caught. But here's the but. But pretty soon he's not going to come back. Pretty soon he's not going to come back because he's going to keep making that move. He's going to make that move next week. Make that move, come track season when we open up the 10K out in California. He's going to make those moves. And before you know it, he's just not going to come back, and you're not going to catch him anymore. So it's been super fun. He's a great kid, good kids, but sometimes, and I'm sure you see this, Rich, coaching, athletes, sometimes they take a larger step than you think they're ready for, and they were right, and they were right, and then they change the way that you the whole training thing, you just shake it up, and I love that stuff. I sometimes it's time to play it safe, but Hammerand said, no, I'm ready for this, and just kind of jumped out of the nest, and here we are as a sophomore ready to roll. So
maybe not talk about playing it safe, but you have a talent as a younger athlete, freshman or sophomore, and it's that fine line, that razor's edge of like we're on the rivet and we're crushing it, but we go 1 inch past that, and then we're dealing with injuries and stuff, and you want to foster that I'm a 10 mentality in the individual, but you also as the coach know that, hey, we're kind of teetering on some uncharted territory. We don't necessarily know what's going to happen physiologically or how we're going to handle this stress. How do you kind of play into that of promoting and getting him to be that 10, have that mindset, but also rein him in when you need to, if you've had to?
Well, I mean, you're talking to me today. We talk a lot. I like to talk. You come to the office, we're going to talk a lot. So um, things really started with him after nationals last year. I mean, he was our 6 man, 5 man. He's our 5 or 6 man. Just kind of had an okay day, and he was really hard on himself. Just really, we're running through the streets of Baltimore, post nationals, waiting for our flight, and we just started planting some seeds about that patience that you're talking about appreciating things as they come, about appreciating the journey, and not getting too far ahead of it, about appreciating a PR, even if it's a second, and just establishing this idea that like growth comes in little stages, and I saw a young man who really felt like we finished fifth last year and just off the podium, a young man who felt like he was partly responsible for not finding a podium. And I really wanted him to appreciate when I told him that I didn't care. The podium's great, but it's still an arbitrary thing. How our athletes, respond to this journey, how they really feel about themselves and this growth. I mean, that's going to trump, that fourth versus fifth, any day of the week. I think a lot of that is just validation. I'm sure, you got to work with athletes on this. Do these athletes validate their identity as a man or as a woman based on a result of a cross country race? And I hope not. I hope not. For me, like, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a teacher, I do all this other stuff, so we didn't lose a lot of sleep over fifth place, but we have something, right, that some of these kids don't have, and that's perspective. So you really try to generate, this idea of perspective with these kids and just get them to appreciate that, how we put it over here in Wartburg. If you know that as you cross the line, you're going to be met with fist bumps, high fives, respect, love, then it's never about pressure. It's always about opportunity. It's always going to be about opportunity. And we were going to give him more opportunities, and as far as like the nuances of when to hold back, I kind of do things a little bit differently. And this is for any of my athletes. When the athletes come in, the first thing that we do, it's called, I mean, it's not that, you can look it up online. We do a biomechanical screen. So, and I do this, with my coaches, we want to take a look at, I mean, if I look a recruit in the eyeballs and say, hey, you can get fast here, and not just like D3 fast, right? Let's go run really fast times. I mean, it was just 2 years ago. I mean, we had a kid qualify for U.S. nationals in the steeplechase. Like we're not trying to do, like medium stuff. Like we're trying to be as good as anybody out there. And if I'm going to tell a kid, hey, we can do that here, and then skip all the biomechanical work, then we're just getting lucky. I want to get to know somebody's, cadence, and I want to get to know their hip strength, and I want to get to know their spinal alignment and their hamstring flexibility. I want to know their shoulder mobility. Like I want to know what makes these guys tick. So a guy like Hammerin comes in and he's all sorts of goofy. He's got, arms that are way too high and he swings them erratically. He's got, not a lot of flexibility in his hamstrings, but he's like 6'2". We got some work to do, so we assess those kids and we give them pre-PT. We give them correctives. Hey, do this for 9 weeks, and we might hold them back. So a kid that wants to run 80, 85 miles a week, we might say, hey, look, this is what we're seeing. We're going to keep you at 65 and throw you in the pool one day a week, and we want you to do these correctives. And we see a lot of improvement that way. Development is the name of the game, and a lot of it, and I appreciate what you said earlier about, talking to smaller schools. We don't have to be good right away. I have time to develop these kids. I'm not sitting here worrying about getting fired. Like I'm not worried about, like our losing scholarship spots, or taking up a scholarship spot with a kid that's not going. I can give a kid as much time as he needs, to get good. And some guys get good right away. I mean, Hammerhand as a sophomore, I don't know how fast he'll run, but you know, he only went 14:54 last year as a freshman. Yeah, I mean, I think this year he'll be in the 13s, in the 5K. Um, Somebody else is going to take longer than that. We had a kid here years ago. He was a 4:57 high school miler from Royal Oak, Michigan. He ran 4:06 for us. Like I got a story about him just like I do with somebody else, and a lot of it has to do right with biomechanics. And once we fix some things and tweak some things, all of a sudden you get a glimmer, right, of hope, and the confidence builds up, and then right success breeds interest, and you got a new PR. So I think with a lot of our kids, I might be a little more aggressive when they come in as freshmen, than a lot of coaches. But I'm aggressive once I look at biomechanical numbers. I'm aggressive once I see that somebody has got really good hip alignment and and they got a lot of good stuff going on. And sometimes it's the guys with huge PRs that are really struggling. Some guy comes in with a great mark, but I see some signs in his hips. I see some pelvic tilt, or I see something going on where we have some hip flexor issues or something like that, where we need to take a step back, throw him on a bike or something, and that's a big thing that we do um, to really help kids out, because you hate seeing it. You always hate seeing, right, that local legend, that state hero go off to a big school and get hurt right away and never be seen again. I think that's the ultimate, nightmare of a distance athlete. You never had a shot, you never had an opportunity. And I'm not saying people don't get injured here, but they're not going to get injured through ignorance. We're going to know exactly what we're working with. So sticking with Hammerand, we did this biomechanical assessment. We do it every 9 weeks for 4 years. Do it every 9 weeks. Well, the ninth week came about 2-3 weeks ago, and we found he scored very low, very low. And we found that compared to 9 weeks prior, his hamstrings were really, really janked. I mean, they no mobility, you know. So we've been working lately, on some sciatica stuff, working on some glute stuff, um, stuff that, had we not, if we didn't do things the way we do, I don't know, maybe he's injured right now. Maybe things are not going the way we want it. So for the last 3 weeks, we've been cross training him once a week based on the assessment. Not just being safe for safety's sake, not just trying to hide a kid or protect a kid, but just looking at his own body and saying, we're going to throw you in the pool, once a week and do some extra work, So anyway,
Coach, you're speaking my language. I love it. One of the things I have focused on as I've gotten older with coaching is the biomechanical aspect of it. And that was just something as an old guy at 48 that this wasn't really talked about much in high school and college. So to hear that you're doing that with the athletes and doing it every 9 weeks is amazing. I will say it's also a little frightening that you two went for a run downtown Baltimore by yourselves. Tell me you're from Iowa without telling me you're from Iowa.
we we drove past a sign that said, like, it was like a no gun zone or something like that, and the Iowa kids were definitely a little afraid. But I tell you what, just to shout out Baltimore, the Inner Harbor was beautiful.
Oh yeah,
We did
beautiful.
enjoy our stay there. Um, Bobby Van Allen, Johns Hopkins coach, he recommended a delicious Italian place. So
Not a macaroni grill.
no, no, it was even better, dare I say it. So
Coach, I'm curious with the screenings and all that stuff that you have going on that you're doing with the coaches. Do you are you incorporating that sort of stuff into the weight room? Do you utilize the weight room? Are you creating the weight programs? Do you have a strength and conditioning coach that you work with?
so we live 3 days a week. Well, 2 days a week in June, and then when July gets here, we had a third day. Every other week, we do supersets. So, you know, one Friday will be, body work, and then, a lot of pull-ups and, and dips, and, the next Friday will be supersets. So in season, we try to schedule, like a lot of coaches, which we try to race every other week. So once the season starts, we incorporate that, where every race week, for the mid distance kids, it's different. But for the, we have A group, B group, C group, D group, and the A group is totally different. They're doing, they're lifting 3 days a week year round, but the other groups, we're lifting once a week on race weeks, and then we do 2 core circuits. So the core circuit we call a monster. I got about 200 cards over here by my desk. We lay them out. You do everything for a minute. We got a stereo pumping in the middle. The idea is, let's have fun and get better. I mean, like, yeah, we're incorporating a lot of like muscle confusion and doing a lot of different stuff in there. But they don't know any better. They're just hanging out with their friends, listening to music. We do that after our hard workouts. So you go out and you do 10, 12,000 meters worth of work. You say, man, that was great. Good day. Well, we're not done. We got a 40 to 50-minute core circuit. And then we'll lift on Wednesdays, and then we'll race. And then if you know Wartburg, if you've raced against us, you'd think that our athletes are always getting punished. We tend to be the last team to leave because we do core afterwards. So, after the regional meet this week, we were the last team at the regional course because we were in the tent, doing our core. So we call those monsters. And then on non-race weeks, we lift twice a week in season and do one of those core circuits. So we're always doing 3 days of something, and then we do core every day. We just have like calendar core, a Monday, a Tuesday, and the kids will memorize it, pretty early on, so they know what Monday core is. But we do have a very good strength and conditioning coach here. He's newer than our program, so if anything, he's helped add, some tweaks here or there. But the head track coach for Central College, they're in Pella, Iowa. They're in our conference. He used to be one of my assistants, and he's really been instrumental. I in a podcast, I would never want to take sole credit of something that is not my own. We've certainly had a lot of help with the strength program, but the core stuff that we do, you are familiar with Jim Spivey? Yes. Yeah. So Spivey is our ASICS rep. He's in charge of college shoes. So I call Spivey up. I want to make sure, I don't just like the name drop. I called Vin up. Now, a couple of years ago, I called Spivey up, and I needed to know something. We were training a kid year round for the mile. COVID went and ruined this, but we were trying to get a kid sub 4, and I never trained a kid year round for the mile. I mean, we're always doing cross, and then moving. So I asked him his opinion, because obviously he knew a thing or two about the mile, and he trained under Peter Coe. I mean, what should we be doing? And he gave me this analogy. I thought was really cool. And if you get him on the show, he could give you tell you the whole story. But basically, this workout that he did with Sebastian Coe, where he was running hills, and then when they were done with hills, they did some tempo stuff. And when they were done with tempo stuff, they did some strides. And when they were done with strides, they kicked a soccer ball around. And when they were done kicking the soccer ball around, he tossed a frisbee back and forth with coach's dog. And when they were done doing that, they thought they'd throw the frisbee around with each other a little bit. And then they did some more hills, and then they did some more reps. And you see where I'm going here. They just did stuff, and 2.5 hours later, so, he says he's just wrecked. He's just wrecked. And he didn't really do anything that hard. It was just accumulation. And he told me that we should really consider, creative ways to get our kids to just do stuff with an active heart rate. Not like 185, 195, but just elevate that heart rate and do stuff. And that's really when we started incorporating, those monsters, as we call them, those core circuits, into our weekly training, because we could go long. I mean, I see some of the workouts that are happening at some of these schools. We could do 18,000 meters. We could really go nuts in these workouts, or we cannot do that, and just do something a little different. When you coach a lot of athletes, you got to try to find a way to incorporate all of them into the party, and not just give 5 guys, this and give the rest of the guys that gets in the way of culture. That interrupts, right, this whole thing that we try to keep. That's this precious thing. And you see it with, talking, Jimmy, about wrestling here at Wartburg. Wrestling's got 65 guys on the team. And if you go down into the, on the mats, all those guys are in there. It's not like there's, wrestling time, mat time for the studs and then mat, they're all in there, so that's where we started incorporating a lot of our strength training, like when we do those supersets, if you do them right, I mean, your heart rate's getting up there. I mean, you're clocking 165, 160, I mean, you get rolling with those supersets. And it's more aerobic work, strength is speed, and I don't want to get my guys good, by giving them 110 miles a week and seeing who survives. I don't want to do that, so we don't, we do other stuff. And it does tend to be more, biomechanically inclined, more strength based. And if you look on the website, we got a pretty nice weight room. We have a really nice facility for these kids. It's 2 stories, so the guys can be downstairs while the ladies are upstairs, so we can optimize our time and get everybody in and out, at the same time. So, yeah.
Amazing. Go ahead, Jim.
Sebastian Coe story for you there, Rich. There you go. That one's for all the track nerds out there that are listening to Airey Bros Radio. Coach, you're speaking our language, and if we were on the set of a broadcast, you would have seen me take my notes for this podcast and throw them up in the air, because we don't even need notes for this podcast. You came right in like you've known us our whole lives, and we've been having a great conversation. You mentioned that when kids cross the line for you, it's high fives, good job. You're not really basing their who they are as people based on their performance. When a kid comes across that line and they might not have had that performance or the performance you thought they should have, how do you deal with that? Is it still high fives? Hey, we'll get them next time. How do you kind of address that when someone doesn't perform well, but still treat them like a human and make them realize their self-worth isn't based on their time or their place on the team?
Well, I think the focus is always on what are the positives we can pull from that day. I mean, and man, sometimes there's not very many, right? I mean, you got to really dig deep, what are the positives from that race? So we got to think, okay, we got out well. We got out well and we put ourselves in a good spot, or maybe we got out reckless, and that recklessness was a sign of what we want to achieve as a runner. That recklessness was less about insecurity, and it was more about a goal and a dream and something we're going to achieve. But frankly, we can't back that up yet. Well, that's okay. We're not going to make a kid feel dumb for caring, for being passionate, but we do need to temper that passion into something a little bit more tangible. So I think you just got to, I mean, isn't this true about coaching? I mean, you just spin it. You just got to spin it, right? So that, our athletes can use every race as a means to get better. Because what happens, I use the analogy you guys are familiar with, the Christmas Carol, right? You got Jacob Marley, right? Wherever Jacob Marley goes, he's dragging those chains, right? And those chains are just this metaphor of all the sins and transgressions, that he's committed, et cetera. Don't be like me, Ebenezer. That's what our kids do. I mean, if they can't deal positively with the day, they bring that negative race to the next race and to the next race and to the next race. And by the time we get to the end of the season, man, they are clanking up the stairs. Like, it's just so much noise, right? With failure after failure after failure after failure. So I think one of the most important things as an athlete, you have to use failure to get better. Like, it's the one thing that we all have in common. Like if guys are at a high school right now, and when I was young shooting hoops, right, I pretend that I was a child of the 80s and 90s, right? So it's all about the Bulls. It's like Horace Grant passes to Pippen. If those kids are talking about runners, they're talking about Ingebrigtsen, they're talking about Kerr, they're talking about Hawk, and they're talking about big names. What do they have in common with those athletes? Well, they've all failed. Like, they've all failed. They've all been disappointed. They've all missed the mark. They've all struggled. They've all suffered. They've all had dumb race plans. Like, it's one of those things where if our athletes can't get over that, if every time they struggle, they run off and look for a tree to hide under, we're just not going to get any better. And if something doesn't make you better, well, then it makes you worse. And we don't have time for that, So I think it's framing it and spinning it, and just having a consistent approach towards, what success means. You got to set this stuff up front, and there are some athletes that they need more time. They need more time to get it. They need more growth. Their perspective is tough. Some are emotionally more immature or more mature than others. But if they can't find a good way to use that failure to propel themselves, towards success, it's going to be a rough road for them. I can remember vividly. I ran for Augustana College, so I got beat by North Central all the time. Powerhouse. Alcarius. The best, just awesome. When I was a freshman, running a conference cross country meet at the mile and a half mark, I was in second place. The winner, or the guy that was winning at that time, was this guy. Tim. Oh, it'll come to me. I don't know. He was the national champ. National champ that year, and I was in second. I'm pressing, and I'm elbowing and just really aggressive. Well, I make it about 2 miles, and then I wind up finishing 75th out of 80 runners that day. All right, and I'm a successful high school runner, and I'm embarrassed. I feel stupid, and I'm just sitting there pouting. And my coach, who's a Hall of Famer, Paul Olson, he nominated for the Hall of Fame 4 or 5 years ago, just great man. My coach found me, and he asked me what seemed like a very silly question, but I think about it a lot as a coach. He said, "Could you have ran with him for 400 more meters?" And you think to that, could I have ran with this guy for another 80 seconds? Sure. Before I threw in the towel, and he simply said, "Do that next time. Just do that next time. Just make it a little further." He said, "I'm only a freshman, and I want to be great." Perspective. I mean, what 17, 18-year-old comes into college with great wisdom and insight and perspective? Not very many of them. So if we can just frame it for them and get them to think a little bit differently, it's a paradigm shift, right? How do we look at failure? So we just talk about it. If we cannot deal well with failure, we're probably going to struggle. We're probably going to struggle. We may have some success. I'm not saying you can't be good, but it's fleeting, because the moment you have failure, there it goes again. I'm not good enough. I'm a failure. I'm a loser. I'm this, I'm that, all these other things, just get in the way, just get in the way. So it's just, long story short, Jimmy, if something doesn't make you better, it makes you worse. All right. So we got to figure out, how to use that day to, to do something cool. So
How do you do that with yourself if the game plan doesn't go right? If you don't advise someone to do something, or they listen to you and it doesn't go the way you thought, how do you address that? And how do you address the athletes when you're addressing yourself, making mistakes?
I'm quick to take accountability. I think that sort of open honesty only makes things stronger. Like the trust between, a coach and an athlete. I mentioned earlier about our guy Schermerhorn is a little tweaked. I feel like I need a workout back. I can, vividly recall the day here about 6 weeks ago or so, where that guy, his hip starts bothering him, and I want that workout back. So I mean, I'd love to answer you that I don't make mistakes, so I don't ever have to, but I don't know. I just think it's just this grace that you have to have for the kids, but you have grace for yourself as well. I mean, we're out here trying to do our best, and there are things that I wish I would have done, but maybe I didn't know it. Maybe I didn't know that thing about that, that athlete, right? I didn't realize that at the time. Sometimes, unfortunately, it takes, it takes a fracture, or it takes, a bad season or something to really learn about somebody and, what their needs are. And, you hope it doesn't come down to that, but it's a journey for me as well, and you hear that as well as being a student of the sport. I don't know if I'm a student of the sport more than I am more than simply, I'm a student of my team's needs, and and what do I mean by that? I mean, the kid that I'm getting in 2024 is different than the kid that I got in 2016. And 2016 kid was different than the kid I got, when I started coaching back in '07. And these kids need different stuff. They have different expectations out of coaches. So we just got to keep, adapting and evolving while still staying true to our own core belief system. Which mine is simply, we got the greatest sport in the world, and we're going to celebrate it every single day, man. It's how awesome is it, to be a runner. You grow up with this stuff. There is never that day, where you hang up the shoulder pads in the garage, and crack open that beer. We just keep running. I'm with you, Rich. I gave up in 2 years ago. I gave up on speed and I ran my first marathon. And now my favorite day of the week's the long run. And I love the 800 and all that. You just keep reinventing yourself. So I genuinely believe that. So if you feel that way, it just doesn't get stale. I just genuinely believe this is an awesome sport, and when it comes to learning and training, and we're going to make some mistakes, we're out front about them, we're not passive, with those sort of things. We're active, and then we move forward. So I sleep pretty well at night, honestly. I do. I sleep pretty well at night. Um, and regardless. So if you were to ask me if it's on your script, how do I feel about, like this upcoming meet, we're ranked second behind lacrosse. I think we're going to go out there and have a lot of fun and run really hard, and I hope that we're able to take down, that giant, in Wisconsin lacrosse. But if we don't, we're going to go down fighting. We're going to go down swinging. We're going to go for it. And at the end of the day, we will at least be able to say that, that we went for it, that we put ourselves in a good spot. I mean, if you watch any of our races, you'll know, and the whole country knows, we get out, right? We're not a team that builds throughout the race. We don't get out slow, right? Our guys get out to the front. We're comfortable in the front, and that's just hopefully where we'll be. And it's a national meet with 350 odd people. You can only coach it so much. So much of it is just have a great attitude, go for broke, and see what happens. And we'll sleep pretty well that night. We'll go to, I don't know, we'll go get some square donuts, right? Yeah, and celebrate. So,
Well, Coach, one of the one of the reasons Jimmy and I love doing this is because we get to meet and have great conversations with someone like yourself who is doing amazing things, and we'll get off of here, and Jimmy and I will be fired up, and we won't sleep well tonight because we got to meet you and had such an awesome conversation. But it also allows us and gives us more teams to root for. So when y'all are on the starting line on Saturday, the Airey Bros are definitely going to be rooting for the Knights. So
well, thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate that.
absolutely. I was going to ask you who the main competition was, but you already covered that. So I
Well,
have.
North Central is going to be good. They gave us everything and more at regionals. So we'll have those guys, and Wisconsin lacrosse, they're right there. Pomona Pitzer, they've won 3 out of 4.
Mhm.
So you gotta throw them out there. They've had a lot of success, but you get lost out there. We're not necessarily counting numbers anymore. You just find your guys and you know run around the course. Right? It's a good workout for us coaches too.
Absolutely. It's a great course too.
Yeah, yeah.
But the last one I have, Jim, and then I'll pass it off to you. But Coach, one of the things we ask a lot of the cross country coaches and the distance coaches is we got to know, it's the latest trend. Everyone talks about it. Do the Knights dabble in the world of double threshold training at all?
Um, we do not.
Okay.
Now in the summertime, that's different.
Hmm.
Um, we don't really have a good setup, to do that, with our academic load. And I think you might hear that from other coaches
Yeah.
too. It doesn't really fit within, our parameters. Um, I like to think about the extra stuff that we do, with strength work, with biomechanics, as a sort of a different approach,
Hmm.
that we feel reaps a lot of benefits. Now, Do we believe in thresh training? Yeah, we do a lot of thresh. We do a lot of thresh. We do a lot of low rest stuff. In fact, I think a lot of people would be surprised at how little like interval or faster work we do in the fall. Um, we just, you know, we are a glorified, 5K, 10K school, with outliers that run fast in the 1500, so um, I I do it, and isn't that kind of funny? Like I do double thresh, and I think a big part of it for me is at 43 years old, once I get about 6,000 meters into a workout, I'm done. I'm done. So, I mean, double thresh allows me to get more volume, but as far as my athletes, so I don't have any sort of strong opposition against it. It
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't really fit with our academic parameters.
Right on. Thank you.
So, Coach, we want to be super respectful of your time. We could talk to you all night, but me and Rich are talking to each other through our minds. We're gonna have you on after you guys win the nationals or before track. We're gonna have
Yeah,
to
great.
get into some more ins and outs of the program and the school, but we want to get into the Final Four. First question I have for you: are you a coffee drinker?
I do not drink coffee.
Power to you, sir.
I choose kombucha.
All right. What's
I
your
mean,
kombucha brand of
I,
choice, flavor
I
of
mean,
choice?
I just cleaned that out right before I
GTs.
talked to you. A
All
big
right.
one, big boy.
Nice.
Right on. You ever dabble in making your own, brewing your own?
Yeah, I got a SCOBY in my
Mm-hmm.
fridge. It's been there for about 4 years.
Okay.
We're waiting. I don't know what we're waiting for, my wife and I. But my wife's a huge coffee drinker. Maybe that's why it's sitting there. I mean, she's got the whole like espresso setup in the kitchen. But I really don't like hot drinks, but
Okay.
I do love kombucha, and um, I should make my own. I
Yeah.
should. You guys can sell it on your show.
Well, we were close to almost selling our own brand because Rich had our kitchen in Denver looking like a science fair. We had a big SCOBY and it just kept on reproducing them, and Rich was brewing it for I'd say 4 or 5 years when we were
Yeah.
living in Denver. And one day I came home from the studio when we were podcasting at the college studio. That's how we started the podcast. I came home and there were shards of glass and scobies all over the place because I guess one of the jars was too tight and just
Oh, no.
exploded.
Fermented a little too long and the pressure had built up and it wasn't a
Yeah.
pressure treated container.
Well, Rich, I mean, it sounds to me you're also so you're interested in the gut health of your distance athletes. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's a whole different. You're talking about these different, topics there, Jimmy.
Hmm.
That's another big one. Taking care of that gut. So we got a big kombucha drinking community here in Waverly.
Waverly.
Yeah. So, but yeah, GT's is the brand because it doesn't have a lot of added sugar,
Hmm.
but it's also like, I mean, GT's is like the, bougie corporate, like big farm of kombucha. So if a little man would join the market here in Northeast Iowa, I think we could rep that as well.
All right. Keep that in mind.
WTF kombucha, Rich.
There
There
you
you
go.
go. There you go. Coach, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
Um, I run. I run on the daily, and sometimes when I don't run, my wife says you need to go for a run. Um, there's a lot of balance. I think part of my success as a coach, it seems like you guys are similar. I just don't stop. My brain's always going. I'm always thinking about something. I'm always interested in something, and running just allows me to sort of lock in a little bit. I run before my kids have to go to school. Um, but something that I think is really important on the daily, and we do this with our athletes. You know, I want the athletes to just hear their name, like every day. We got a lot of them, but and it doesn't have to be anything profound. just how you doing, with a name. During a workout, get through everybody. It could be, hey, great haircut. It doesn't have to be, relax your arms or this, that, and the other. And I think that's really important. Even for me, I come in from my run, and my children are 12, 10, and 7, and my children hear their name every day, you know, so it's, and enthusiastic, uh, good morning, Elliot. Like, hi, Abe, just names, names, names. Um, and we start our day with that all the time. This is a crazy job. I'm gone a lot, but I want to make sure that, you know, my relationships are good, like everything is clear. We're not holding any transgressions. We're not holding on to any junk. We're just, cleaning it all out. And I think running has been that thing for me. If I got hurt, I've been so selfish with my running for 40 some years. I don't know what I'd do if I got hurt. I don't like to ride bikes. Like I'm not good with stationary stuff. I'm not a good swimmer. I was 18 years old. I was doing aqua jogging in a pool. A lifeguard jumped in. I was drinking too much water. Um, so that's a big part. Um, and I listen to music. I like listening to music. I do that. I have it. I don't know what you guys are dealing with. You got some more traffic than I got, but I got a 1.1 mile commute, and I drive a 2005 Pontiac Vibe, which I think is a very good coach's car, and it's got a CD player. And because I'm 43, I got a huge CD collection. I don't need it right anymore. It's all on Spotify, but I genuinely spend time most mornings picking out what CD I want to play on the way to work, and I understand the frivolity of it. I got 1.1 miles, but it just sort of sets my day up, you know, just, you know, there's a choice, right? I'm not, I have not fallen victim to the rat race. Every day there's some sort of choice that I'm actively making, and I think that's a good thing. It's good to be at this stage of my life, and to have options and to have choices and to have new stuff. Um, and that's why it's cool to be in this gig, like you always got something new. There's always something new thrown at you, including double thresh.
Yeah. You got
Yeah.
one of those big books
What are
with
you
your
talking?
CD? Yeah, one of those big books with the CDs to play,
Oh,
or you keep
well,
them in the cases.
no, I got all the cases.
Okay.
Yeah, I got all I have those books, but that's for all the burn discs.
Yeah.
Back when we were taking stuff off
LimeWire.
like Napster and LimeWire. But we right, what we didn't, but we did. So
Well, Ryan, you teed me up for the next question, but I want to address you talking about addressing people by their first names. And because of this podcast, it has helped Rich and I with our communication skills and talking to complete strangers 2 to 3 days a week. And you pick up on certain things. And there's just something about when you're having a conversation with someone, you don't know them too well, and they address you by your first name. You're like, oh, it's just kind of like that warm and fuzzy, like,
mhm.
your mom tucking you in at night. Like, oh, I am a person. You did address me by my first name. So I can appreciate that tip. I really appreciate that. And like I said, you teed me up for the next question. What
Yeah.
are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Well, I'm a real snob when it comes to audiobooks. So my big passion when I'm not doing running stuff, is books. So in the basement of my house, there's about 19,000 books. Um,
Wow.
and my wife and I, we had, this was first time in my life this happened to me. About 3 months ago, we had a pipe bust, and I lost,
Oh no.
like 700 books. But we got homeowners insurance, and it was like this ethical dilemma. Do I spend this money from homeowners insurance on like fixing a bathroom, or like replacing the carpet in my daughter's room, or do I just replace all the books? Which it was like a 60-40 books to life ratio, so um so I've never done the audiobook and nothing against, nor like the Kindle or anything. I just like books. I like the way they smell. I like books as a commodity. You know, I just we are consumers. You know, us 40-some-year-olds, like we grew up in consumer, culture. You know, if we wanted to listen to music, we had to purchase it. So I certainly am on my Spotify account, but I do like books. You know, and then my brother, I have one brother, he's a librarian at the University of Illinois. So, I
You
mean,
guys really like books.
we're all about books. For 1 year, we lived together in St. Louis in a big apartment. It was a 2,000 square foot apartment. It was a converted synagogue. It was a synagogue. You know, it had 40-foot ceilings. Unbelievable. I'll never live anywhere like it. Um, on Flat Avenue in Midtown St. Louis. And for 1 year, his books and my books came together. I mean, the place was like a library, So, um, but what am I listening to right now? It's kind of goofy, but I went to work this morning listening to this artist called Pananen, a Finnish artist from the late 70s. That sounds really pretentious, but that's what I got today. But the real answer, I have a 7-year-old daughter, so the majority of the time I'm listening to Taylor Swift.
Oh, Rich.
Oh, that's 90% of my music time is T Swift.
Coach, I don't know if you've listened to a bunch of podcasts, but you're just teeing us up for our next question.
So what do
Ryan,
we got?
last one we have for you, Ryan. Do you have a guilty pleasure? And usually I say it can be anything. It can be food. We talked about music. Maybe you're a closet Swiftie, but you already came out and said that you listen to a fair amount of T Swift. So do you have a guilty pleasure?
I like Taylor Swift a lot. Do I have a guilty pleasure? Um, I uh, I like I'm pretty healthy, and we talk a lot about nutrition, with the team all the time. I mean, today, we had a meeting talk about nutrition, but you put potato chips in front of me, I go nuts. If I guess if there was a guilty pleasure, I just like potato chips, and I like them all. I mean, if there's like a regional like South Carolina brand that I haven't had, I want to know about it. Um, I like potato chips a lot. Um, when I got big into running when I was 12 years old, and I just decided it was cold turkey. Like no this, no that. I gave up chocolate. Didn't have any soda. You know, and I think some people are better at that than other people. They can just sort of flip a switch. And that was me. But I could never give up potato chips. I mean, I could give up just about anything. Didn't drink in college, nothing. But man, you put some like Cool Ranch Doritos in my vicinity, like before you know it, I'm going to be cradling that bag like a child, so like my own child, right? So
Jimmy used to
anyway,
love himself some Cool Ranch Doritos too.
so
Yeah, definitely. Coach, thank you so much for your time and your insight this evening. Like
yeah.
Rich already said, we are going to be rooting for the Knights come this weekend and wish you guys the best of luck. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Ryan, it was an honor, pleasure to get to chat with you and get to know you. Like Jimmy said, we'll definitely have to get you back on here either after you guys win on Saturday or maybe before indoor or outdoor. It's been an honor and pleasure to chat with you, pick your brain a little bit and hear about what you got going on with the program.
Well, the same, gentlemen. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, y'all. That's Ryan Chapman from Wartburg College. Go check them out this weekend as they toe the line at the NCAA Division III National Championships cross country at Terre Haute, Indiana. Thanks for joining us. We will be back on Thursday night. So we'll see you then. Take care. And